Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the show that never ends. It is Tyrants on the Field, and I am joined by three members of Team USA Condor. That's right, your Silver Birds, uh, flying over the WTC, taking second place. I am joined by the irascible Jake Van Meter, or JVM, the Iron Lip himself, Brad Park, and Blake the Snake Hooper.
Thank you for the
How are
nickname.
you, gentlemen, tonight?
Doing well.
Doing well, yes, thank you.
I'm doing fantastic. There's no way I was going to speak before my captain, Jake Van Meter.
I heard Ashley.
Ashley's
That's
here.
That's fantastic.
She was the best
Ashley.
shuffleboard uh,
Yes.
teammate. Tell her that, please.
Yeah, no, she knows. Yeah, you guys ran the table on shuffleboard all
No, no, no,
Sunday
no,
night.
no. We didn't run the table. She ran the table. I was just
She
there.
ran the table, and you happened to be your teammate.
That is correct.
Second at WTC, first at shuffleboard.
Well, the shuffleboard's really what matters.
I mean, you spend an entire weekend pushing round bases across the table, but even when the event's over, you just can't get enough. You need more.
Whatever you have to do to get it done. And again, I think that the U.S. team and U.S. Condor obviously had the best result of the U.S. teams. But I think the U.S. teams as a whole had a very strong showing over the weekend. All three of you in the top 10, obviously Condors in second place, with Bison in ninth and USA Jackrabbits in 10th. Can you peek a little bit behind the curtain? Was there a lot of collaboration between the three teams this year, or a little bit more than we've had in years past, or about the same? And do you felt that that helped with getting the results that the U.S. teams had?
Let Brad talk about this one.
Yeah, so I have only the experience of WTC from 2022, where each team felt very much like a silo, which is pretty incredible, I think, because that year we had 5 teams. That was the year where we didn't cap it at 30, or when WTC wasn't capped at 32 teams. So if you wanted to go, you could basically just go. And each team felt very much like its own thing. Compared to this year, there was not constant communication between the teams, but what was refreshing and nice to see, though, was the Discord thread that we had, or Discord channel that we had across all three teams was fairly active. And then in the weeks leading up to list lock and then post list lock, there were all three team meetings where we would talk through expectations, or uh, not even just expectations around what we expect to see, but also what is expected of us as players representing the U.S. So it was more than just a what do we need to do to win, but how do we conduct ourselves in the manner we need to conduct ourselves. So it was uh, really kind of touching all fronts, but that those kind of conversations and those kind of all team meetings did not exist in 2022, and for years beyond just those two that I was a part of. Jake and Blake can speak, I think, a bit more to those.
I mean, I think that there was a fair amount of communication and camaraderie between the three U.S. teams. Not necessarily in terms of like individual composition or suggestions, but I don't think we were ever shy in trading with each other, or bouncing ideas off each other, giving members of outside our team requested matchup games for things we could play. I do think that narrowed a little bit after list lock, when we started seeing it's like, okay, we're identifying the individual problems. We're getting down to very narrow question answering matchups, and those are going to be necessarily individualized, depending on everybody's everybody's ratings with respect to choosing their team comps and the matchup process. But overall, I did really feel that we came as a single entity, and definite kudos to USA Condor and USA Jackrabbits that are we're Condor Bison and Jackrabbits, excuse me. But yeah, I think everybody did well. All the U.S. teams getting top 10, I think, is great, and hoping to keep up that momentum next year.
Oh, for certain. I mean, you guys have been building the last 2 years. Last year you hit bronze, first podium in 10 years for the U.S. Follow it up with a silver this time. So I think that means we, you know, take it in Poland again, which I believe was the location of our first WTC Gold, if I'm not mistaken, JVM.
Yeah, it was. Many, many moons ago in a galaxy far away.
Totally different time and game, almost, and yet the same. All right, so I do have a couple of listener questions that I want to sprinkle in here. Joe from the Atlanteans gave me quite a few. And I love this question that he's asked. What is one teammate's habit that the rest of the team and the rest of the U.S. team should copy?
Should not copy?
Should copy.
Oh,
Should do.
copy.
Should copy.
Before I answer, are we looking for internal to our 5 players or just any U.S. player?
Any U.S. player.
Yeah, I think I asked that question. I'm still going to go internal to our team. I don't think I've seen a player more organized on the table than Brandon. Between having an organizer for all of his tokens and cards and proxy bases that he puts on the edge of the table, to of course the measuring sticks that are there in a tray next to that, to my personal favorite, the holster laser, so he never has to look for it when he's checking line of sight. He pulls out like a Western showdown. So I think in terms of making every minute count, especially as you get into late games where you have to be moving quickly, having that level of organization is something to work towards.
I think something that we did that I think worked well, and I feel that could be emulated and probably should be, was having the dedicated matchup people. Brad took lead on that, and the table scouts, which were me and Brandon this year, and sort of given the upcoming scenario, and how WTC terrain can be a little wilder by design, because selecting tables should be a decision that actually matters. Sort of dividing those duties and collaborating on that is something I think is always should be a part of the conversation for the most effective decisions possible.
Yeah, I ended up applying for captain, getting captain, but I was pretty much captain only by name. I don't like being captain or having to select the team and
That's my
all the
captain,
politics
so
behind.
Captain, my captain.
Yeah, I hate all the politics behind being a captain. So basically, once we made the team and we started talking, I just basically told everybody we're all co-captains and we're all equals, and there is no one captain. So we all took took responsibilities and kind of spread it amongst everybody, rather than just have one uniformed captain.
Yep.
Just the humility I'd expect from our captain, JVM, first.
That's my
first
captain.
among equals.
Excellent. I want to touch on table scouting a little bit more. I don't want to reveal any trade secrets, but when evaluating the tables, what was kind of some key highlights that maybe you can share around how you guys were evaluating tables? What was the logic going into the scouting that would trigger a table as being poor or trigger a table as being a green?
Can I, Blake, I know you're a table scout. Can I answer that one?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that was important for looking through that terrain was kind of twofold on our team. The first of which is you're looking for anything that's like an obviously uh, not great setup when it comes to flag positioning, whether that's on payload or wolves that are heals or whatever, right? So that's something that Blake and Brandon are checking for is if there's a dead area in any one of the tables where a player's going to be left with one maybe not great choice for a flag. And the second one, which was very relevant for me, um, is if we were the team that was choosing more tables and matchups, very often I would want to lead with Blake because a Harusk Orgoth list pair just generally doesn't have many dodges. Even if it's not something Harusk doesn't want to play into, Sabrith can probably play those games. So
Yep.
Blake was often who we were intending to lead with. Where it became a problem, if it was going to be a Harusk game, and the player that we would maybe anticipate Blake getting would then put him on a all city all the time board where the Garlgast can't get anywhere at once. Well, now I can't. Now I probably shouldn't lead with Blake, and then it pivoted to Justin. So a lot of times, at least specific to us, it was which player do I lead with? Because I do actually think there was a round where we were going to lead with Blake, and we switched to leading with Justin because Zadaroth just has Ghostwalk.
I
Yep.
think. I mean, besides everything that's that was said, that Brad said, one additional element that we were looking for, and this was very much a more JVM and Brandon specific consideration, was terrain that could go with their existing line of sight blocking components to basically form a line of sight screen that could, advance up the board, play scenarios safely, that sort of thing. And that would combo well with like Brandon's clouds from the Rowdies, or the Shadow Flame clouds from Nixian and Atlas, or just Racking Veil of Mists.
I would be interested to see, and this might be another thing that you can pull together because I know you like your statistics, but in the past, when it comes to picking tables and matchups, Shard, like this year, obviously Shard had the Trike, and the Trike was this big meta boogeyman, and it dictates a lot of like the matchups it's going to go into. But even like a few years ago when I was playing like Legion and Shard last year, whenever I got put on a board that I wasn't able to pick, and it was a wide open board, I almost always lost that game. So most of the times when I was able to basically be put down, they picked the matchup, but I picked the table. I was always almost 90% of the time I'd win that matchup because I could pick the favorable table for Shard and for Legion because they really do depend on your terrain.
Yep. Yeah,
I think
their
it's also
power definitely scales with availability of cover and line of sight blocking.
I think it's also worth saying that Jake seems to rack Host of Shadows a fair amount more than I've seen discussed or in other Chimera matchups, such that the, besides obvious assassination considerations for the rest of the battle group, it allows the Trike a lot more freedom on otherwise troublesome boards for 120 millimeter base, something that's only really matched by like the Phantasm or the Hellraker in other matchups.
Yeah, having that extra bit of mobility is critical occasionally when there's a large obstacle in the way or just a problematic spacing. But having the ability to ignore terrain is really good, and that's been a staple of the factions that JVM has tended to play since Mark II, when Legion didn't even have terrain rules. It's great. All right, so let's go on to. Gonna ask a follow on to what we just talked about. How often did you guys actually get to pick the matchups? Because I believe I read that you only picked the one round.
The one we lost.
Yeah, maybe it's not better.
I mean, to be fair, the one round where we didn't pick tables, it was an entirely different set of tables. So maybe that was a factor.
Yeah, the stream terrain was different than every other row of tables terrain.
Interesting.
But yeah, so we picked tables rounds 1 through 3, and then round 5. Round 4, we won the roll. Were team matches, and we did lose that round.
And it was the one round that we wanted to win the roll to pick the matchups.
Yeah,
Okay.
England Paddington had a very good team list composition wise, and I know you've gone over that already, Joe. But
Yes.
it was one that was full of quite a few landmines. So if we were on team tables there was a very real chance that quite a few of us would have been in matches we maybe didn't necessarily want. But after seeing the result, maybe we should have just been on team matchups the whole way through, or been on team tables the whole way through. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know that that would have saved you. I think that there was some fundamental things just looking at it, and again, the benefit of hindsight. Just looking at it, I don't know that there were better matchups that you could have gotten than how it ended up playing
No, it's
out.
all good. The trick is someone's got to nerf Jilva. Not losing in 3 years of WTCs is just too much.
Yeah. Um, yeah, Silva with the call to go Colossal with Zat, and then play it in the manner in which he plays it. Um, yeah, watching Brandon get choked out on stream was very painful.
Oh, that potato fairy.
Yeah, but again, hats off to Paddington. Phenomenal team, phenomenal composition. Played absolutely fantastic War Machine the entire weekend. Um,
So what
after
was the original question?
the original question was matchups and or you guys rolled or you guys picked matchups only once because you lost the roll, but you were on tables.
Yeah.
What my original question is beyond that is, do you feel that the current setup is enough where you would ever choose to pick tables willingly,
No.
or should that be incentivized? Because this has been a discussion the last few days in the trash court.
Yeah, I feel like, and not to jump out to the lead here again, boys, I apologize. Before I run away with this, Jake, Blake, do you want to go first?
No. See, I'm very simple. You're more analytic than I am. Basically, when we play games, I want somebody to tell me where I'm going to play, and I'll play that game for you, and that's what I do.
All right. So, years prior, I can remember whether it was ATC to Boker Brawls to OTCs, just other team formats beyond just the one WTC I was at, right? Where there was a discussion around if you won the role, which side did you want? And it wasn't always team matchups or team tables, right? I
Hmm.
actually think on in prior lives, when team tables got to choose all 5 tables, that if we won the role, we would opt to be team tables. Now, the reason where that gets tossed on its head a bit is similar to what we ran into at Paddington. There are just times when multiple players have multiple dodges, to where if if that opposing team can land their players um, into the advantage matchups, the table being better for our player doesn't necessarily help enough um, to kind of right size that bad matchup. Um, so then there was still that kind of decision point for the team winning the role back when it was a all or nothing game when it came to table selection. Um, I actually, my preference would be that it goes back to that formatting where it's
Hmm.
a team gets to choose 3 out of the 5 matchups, but the other team gets all 5 of the table selections, and that in that same kind of setup, while maybe there's a table that has a centerline objective and none of the others do, right? Like within reason, the table should be, in my opinion, a little bit more balanced than what they were this year at WTC, where there's one board that is 5 obstructions, and the table next to it is water and forest terrain and no cover of any kind, right? Like it's just
Hmm.
rough terrain and concealment, right? So I think there's got to be a bit more of a even-ish mix of terrain types across tables, um, in order for that to really be feasible. Because similar to kind of what Jake was saying, right? If it goes to an all or nothing setup for table picks, and the other team is on table selection, no matter what round in the pairing process Jake gets taken, he's on the open field, right? But if
Yep.
every table is a roughly equitable mix of terrain. Maybe it's not center line in the middle of the board, obstruction or forest. Maybe it's off to one of the sides. Maybe it's closer to one table edge than the other. But it gives you some anchor point to try and do something around scenario. It felt like this year's WTC that the 5 tables, table to table, were all very, very different by design.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think I would look to change both of those. I think current state, there would never be a reason to
Yep.
not choose team matches, um, just because you still get to select tables. And not only do you get to select tables, you get the first table selection, which I would argue is maybe the most important one. If they have an old Umbry player, and they are not the first matchup that gets taken, then you put whatever that matchup is on the forest board. If they have a Crix player that can ghost walk and they don't have an old Umbry player, right? Well, now the
Hmm.
first matchup, wherever it is the one with all of the obstructions on the center line. Just whatever the best table to take away from your opponents is, you do that. While also getting to choose 3 of the 5 matchups, right? Like it's I think it is too heavily skewed towards teams matchups to where there is no choice at the beginning of every round.
Yep. That makes innate sense. As somebody that's played in the format, not at the WTC, but played in team formats, that the table selection piece is important, but it's not important enough to where you would give up a matchup and first table pick.
I mean,
Um,
I think what I'd want to add in there is also there are precious few armies that really care much about terrain right now. It's like of the Mark IV armies, I'm looking at them, and it's really just I would say Sea Raiders and Brine Bloods that care about terrain across significant portions of their army, and even
mhm,
Brine Bloods you kind of get a pass if you're running Shadow Tongue. With the rest of the armies that are played, it's Storm Legion. Obviously, Huxley was the most popular, and he can call all Pathfinder all the time. The other obviously there's the March solos on a stick. The Things like Infernals and Crix have such easy access to Ghostly. Old Umbre and Gravediggers are both Pathfinder, the faction, and Shadowflame has both. So when you consider that it's like 2 of the, what is it, 9 now Mark IV factions are the only ones having real trouble dealing with terrain. And of the popular legacy stuff, I would argue the only really dark options are dark operations. Um, might have a challenge there, aside you know, some of the several one or two offs we've seen. I think that definitely factors into the table choice being less relevant, since there's only a select few armies that really even worry about terrain too much. And, given the aesthetic of, the upcoming Kith card being jungle trolls, I don't necessarily see that trend reversing.
yeah, that makes solid sense to me as well. With terrain being such a non-factor in mini games, while also being a factor, simply because the movement inhibition is just not present for a majority of armies, like you mentioned, Blake. And if it's not inhibiting movement, then it's not really doing much to affect the game outside of its effect on whether shooting is good or not, or lanes of control, those type of things. Which is not to say that the terrain is irrelevant, but the terrain is highly mitigable.
Well, there is one scenario where the terrain is extremely relevant, and that scenario was banned in WTC because it has
Yes.
its own set of problematic elements.
Color guard is the one that we're referring to, which is a scenario that is very interesting and has a lot of problems, particularly at scale, because it requires a lot of TO interference ahead of the game to ensure that the pathing is relatively fair, and it does have an outsized win rate if you have a defensive feat and your opponent makes, even with proper pathing available, if your opponent makes a mistake in terms of where they take their path, that scenario can get out of hand almost immediately. It becomes
I
a
mean,
non-game.
the real issue with color guard, though, and none of your points are wrong, but the real
Mhm.
issue with color guard is there's a handful of things that exist within the steamroller packet to make it to where going second isn't just inherently a negative, right? You get to deploy
Yep.
forward at the board. The scoring begins on the second player's turn first, right? So you get to control if you're scoring something, if you're going to go up to contest, whatever. Color guard turns the advantage of an advantage may be the wrong word here, but the benefits of going second on its head because the flag movement on color guard happens at the end of the second player's turns, which means that the player that has gone first has an entire round where when they put their models somewhere to score them, where that stays the scoring element, right?
Yep.
Whereas if I go second, I need to put models somewhere to score it where it currently is, and also put models somewhere else for where it's going to be if I want to be relevant during my opponent's turn. Um, so one of the larger problems with color guard, beyond kind of the pathing issues that you might run into, which I'll be out with how terrain dense some of these tables are getting, I don't know how much of an issue that really is, but
Hmm.
the timing of the scenario, the flag elements moving in the scenario, just makes it so that going first, similar to being team matchups, is just the obviously correct choice.
No, that's a very good point, Brad. Uh,
And then it actually doubles down what you're saying, right? So like if I go
yes.
first on color guard, I move forward. Turn one is done. On turn two, I maybe put some models out to contest some things, not really doing much. And maybe the player that has gone second is now going to score higher than me on the bottom of two. On the top of three, I can now make a play, even if I'm overextending, to try and score both flags because it's already moved, right? So
Hmm.
whatever defensive position my opponent had is now moved forward. I can make a play to score both flags, whatever scenario elements I'm able to get to, and then defensively feed. And if they can't contest or they can't clear it, um, I will just win on their turn. And even if they can, now at the end of their turn, the flags are moving again. So like the models that they were fighting very hard to get through via that defensive feat are now not in scenario relevant positions after the flags move again on the bottom of three.
Yep.
The piece de resistance for that is that the first player moves their flags first. I understand that, like, I'm sure the design of
Yeah,
it
also
was
that.
to allow the second player reactive moves for that, but practically speaking, it allows, since no terrain piece can be a flag host, it actually gives the first player even more agency to lock off certain terrain pieces from the board and dictate where the second player's flag ends up. So
I, funny enough, real quick tangent at Siege, I had the Dream set up on Color Guard because we played it at Siege, where I was able to put my flag train on a piece of scatter terrain, run it over with a Necro Harvester. Whoops, the flag fell out. Put it in a spot to where it could only jump to a center piece of terrain. But whoops, I went first. I'm going to choose that center one for my opponent's flag to jump to. Oh, there is no legal piece of terrain for it to go to. I guess my flag just stays in my deployment zone now. What's embarrassing about the game is I lost that game. So maybe it wasn't the most helpful thing.
It happens. Also,
Very.
make the points not be 2 for the scenario terrain. That might also help.
That would help a lot in terms of just making it a more bearable scenario that's not going to end immediately.
When you have 120s and let's just say you put it on like a forest, a small forest, and your 120 like stands on it, knowing that's where it's going to go. It's the only like place that it can be allocated to the turn before. You park him on it, and then you like block it off so nothing else can get onto it, and then you're just like sorry.
Anyway, we're looking forward to hearing the next listener color guard question. That's what they were asking about, right?
Yes. So next listener question, again from Joe from the Atlanteans. What advice that is good for a top 90% player, but bad for the regular player, i.e. somebody that's not a high-level competitive player?
Good advice for a high-level player, bad advice for...
Good advice for a high-level player that is bad advice for a lower-level player.
Well, I do have one. I can start here. And this is advice that I would say is more for if you're going to a competitive event, definitely not in general. And I would say playing off meta. I think that at high level events, an experienced player that's bringing something kind of dark horsey, that other players necessarily haven't seen before, and if the person who's playing knows what they're doing or has a specific strategy in mind that may not be necessarily obvious at list construction, they can do extremely well with that. But for a newer player, again, if you're looking at if you're looking at bringing it to a competitive event, it might be worth considering something a little bit more tried and true, or something with a maybe more obvious but also more overtly powerful game plan. Obviously, outside of a competitive environment where you're looking to win, I absolutely encourage experimentation, because this is how innovation happens, and there's always a chance of stumbling on something great and then getting all the imitators. But I guess that's what I would start in terms of jumping into the Shark Tank, as it were.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to not answer this, but I don't know if I like the framing of the question, right? Like, I don't think and I think this is probably true for our whole team, and I would imagine any one of the U.S. teams, or really just any player at WTC. Like, I don't think any of us are smarter than anyone else, right? Like, it's not a measure of intelligence to make one of these teams or be good at this game. It's just a matter of practice, right? Like I think if we're talking about advice for this game, I can't imagine one bit of advice I'd have about play that would be bad in the hands of some players and helpful to others, right? Like, at the end of the day, this game is all positioning and how you can mitigate dice, right? Like, how can you make it so that your plans have the least dice impact to them, right? If you can find a way to reduce someone's defense, reduce their armor, increase your defensive stats, whatever, and then position in a way to threaten relevant table space and not lose models, right? Like, that's I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one.
Okay.
I mean, I will jump on that a little bit by saying as Brad says, a lot of the difference between the top 90%, if as the question was phrased, and others is just experience. But beyond that, just with personal positioning and play and the nuts and bolts on the table stuff, it's also a question of meta and matchup predictions. Understanding what's popular, why it's popular, how it's trying to beat you, and how you can most effectively combat it. And making the right calls on that kind of metagame is I think very important at the very high level.
I don't disagree with you, Blake, but like, what advice would you give? Like, if you were talking to Jake Rye, what would you tell to Jake Rye about understanding a matchup that if you said it to someone else who was just starting Crix would be bad advice? Like, I just don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. I so it's so yeah, it is a difference of it. It's as you say, where so much of it is just a difference of experience levels, and in that context, there really is no bad way to practice or play. Because every game played, unless is just going to be it's going to be more experience. You're going to get better at least moving your own stuff, seeing what other people are doing, and getting a better idea of what you have to watch out for.
So one of the questions that I have for you guys now that we're post event is, was the meta as you expected it at list lock? Meaning, do you think you brought the right things for the meta at list lock? And do do you think that the teams that had slight pivots or wrinkles in their list compared to what we would consider the meta chalk, do you think the fact that they had some pretty strong success collectively, Paddington being a pretty big indicator of it, um, do you think that that is an indicator of where the meta was heading, and it was just a misread on the U.S. part, or is it simply a case of the way the two teams ended up matching up when Paddington faced each other? They just had some silver bullets that most of the other teams just didn't have.
I felt like we brought basically the meta. The only thing that we didn't do, right, we didn't bring
Hmm.
OU because I didn't think anybody felt comfortable enough to play it and get the reps in time. And then the only other faction I feel like that we could have brought that could have been made a consideration that we kind of pushed off was the Cephalic stuff.
Hmm.
I saw a lot of the Cephalics do very well and questioned everything after I saw them do so well.
Yeah.
But outside of those two, like I felt like we basically brought the meta. And look at Paddington. Paddington didn't have OU on their team either, right? And they ended up
Yeah.
winning the event. Um, but in regards to silver bullets, like you might have some people in your team composition, like look at Blake. Blake brought Sabrith. Sabrith was his Crix drop. He didn't play. He never got to play it because he didn't play into Crix. From
Yep.
if I'm correct, so he played Hurusk
Mm-hmm.
every single game. Like I brought Nixian. Nixian was my Crix and my Dust drop. I got to play it twice into Crix and Dusk. That's all I brought it for. So uh, I wouldn't really say it's a silver bullet. I feel like it's something that gives you a better game into those matchups. And like Paddington had a few in their list composition that were made to play against specifically. Like look at like Perkins, like Kyrax made to play into Infernals and like Crix and stuff like that. I think it's Crix, but
Yep.
just
Yeah,
that
that was
that
his quick
defense
drop.
skew and shit like that. So I mean, he brought that to give him an edge on those matchups. Just because playing Sheriff Strike into those matchups is miserable and nobody wants to do it.
Yeah, I think just to answer kind of meta at large, the two ones that surprised me was that OU was higher than I was anticipating for a new released army. I
Yep.
certainly anticipated them being there, but I was thinking maybe half of the number that they actually had represented. And then similarly, I was not anticipating the amount of Dusk that was also in the room. Um, I don't know what factions I necessarily was anticipating to fill the void of. I know the answer. I was expecting more Wintercore and Orgoth. Um, just things that people had practice on, own the models for. Um, um, yeah, so the amount of OU and the amount of Dusk for me were the bit of surprising ones. Beyond that, I think the thing we were anticipating was that the Mark IV factions were the things we were planning for, and then beyond the Mark IV factions was just Infernals, Cephalics, and I think that's it in terms of like stuff that we were trying to be cognizant. Oh, I guess the only other one that we thought might see play, and it did, but less than I think we were thinking it might, was we were thinking there might be some more Makeda 2 Western reaches. And I think there was
Mhm.
2 in the entire field. I thought that number would be higher for some reason. But that was maybe just on me on a personal level, than maybe what we actually should have expected.
I mean, I do recall that a couple of our true dodges, as opposed to our soft dodges, were some off-meta legacy stuff. You know, Army of the Western Reaches is one example. I know Final
Hmm.
Interdiction was another.
I don't want it.
Um, I mean, you know, and that's something that, while not necessarily good into the field, would be good against certain individual lists of ours. But to answer the broader question about the metas, you know, I do think that we brought the meta in the same way that Paddington also brought the meta. But I do think that Paddington's, even though they brought meta threats in terms of factions and casters, I do think that they had each of their lists had a little bit of spice in it we that people weren't necessarily prepared for, and obviously Paddington knew what they were doing with them enough that did give them an edge in a lot of matchups. You know, I'm just looking at their lists here. It's like Zill's Zadaroth with the Harvester. I don't think anybody else did that
Yep.
in Infernals, and obviously that ended up being effective. I remember, you know, JVM being like that. You know, Perkins's serious list is designed to hunt the mirror. I don't want to. I don't want to play that. I mean,
Yep.
he hates the mirror anyway, but you know, for more than just being a miserable slog. You know, there's bit. So I think that meta. I think it gets down to like the granularity of individual choices that do end up making a difference there in terms of, even if it, you know, forces you to think on your feet or turn left a little bit compared to, you know, another Huxley General and Four Strikers list, I think is important.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me on some of the lists that performed a little better than expected, or whose teams performed a little better than expected, Paddington being the prime example, is I think the shifts that they made in their lists were enough to keep them on the matches that would be expected to be meta slate, but it opened up a few matchups in a different way with the tech choices that they brought. Obviously, like Perkins Trike being able to play the mirror changes the grid significantly going into 18 Shadow Flame shards, where almost 2/3 of those brought Shyrus with a trike. So
I mean, the difference is in the composition, right? So he brought the
yes,
Wyvern. The Wyvern's being able to trample with the trike is what he needs to finish it off. On top of that, he brought Shades for contesting. But in the mirror, if you don't have the Shades in the Sheerest mirror, it just basically, you're on a continual clock of like, how are you going to activate Sheerest? Where are you going to put yourself each round to contribute to the fight, to get Hand of Destruction where it needs to be without
yep.
just blowing up, right? You just can't risk it.
Yeah, it makes it a very uncomfortable mirror, and that's already an uncomfortable mirror. So yeah, it's interesting bits that I thought for the way that you guys were comprised. You were pretty much on book, and you uh, worked the matchups in such a way, at least the matchups that you could select. Um, a lot of it was just outskilling your opponent, outworking your opponent at the table, and that paid off in the majority of rounds. And again, it's not like Paddington blew you guys completely out of the water. Um, it's just the way some of those games crumbled, and even with the matchup dictation, it's just interesting bits of nuance and things to take forward as we think about future events. All right, have another listener question. We kind of covered metagame here. let's see, how much did you guys alter your faction choices lists for the team event versus what you normally play in singles events?
I after Bo Kerbrall, I basically played the two lists that I had, and they never changed for the rest of the year. So I've
Yep.
been on that list forever, and I was just going to rep them out and play as many games as I could against everybody. Joined NAL leagues, did the tournaments, conventions, signed up for Euro leagues to play into them to see what they were playing and to get more reps into what they're playing, and that was it. So I just played a shit ton of games with those two lists. I fucking bored out of my mind of it, and I hated it, but it needed to be done.
Yep.
Uh,
I
yeah, Blake.
yeah, I like my Horus list being the main list for Orgoth. Shocker, I know. I locked that in pretty early, and that never really changed. So a lot of it was just reps with it. My off list was certainly something more experimental. I knew that I wanted to target it against Crix, and so I tried out Butcher and Sabreth in different configurations. Obviously settled on Sabreth in part because of the Kythos factor, because Butcher doesn't have Carnage available at all, and
Yep.
Sabreth, she can use it, and sometimes it's dangerous for her, but it can actually work against Kythos because his threat ranges are very predictable. But there was also the introduction of Old Umbre, which definitely changed up some consideration at kind of the last minute and made Sabreth something preferable there. So in terms of how I would so I guess it wasn't a significantly different pair than what I'd bring to a solo event, considering how much of the field Horus covers, or at least plays fairly into. But I think
Hmm.
that's more of a function of where Orgoth is at current state, rather than any sort of greater philosophy of building for a team event.
I think I'm far more out there than both Blake and Jake, and really I
Hmm.
think our whole team. Um, if like so, I don't have much of a meta here in New Orleans. There's a group of guys that are trying to kick things up, and I've been a very bad local player, and that I almost never make it out to game nights. Just a work schedule that makes that not the easiest to do. So almost all my practice, if not all my practice, comes from either online pickup games or null leagues. And if you look back at the lists submitted through all those null leagues, I think I've played every Crixcaster in leagues leading up to WTC, like within like
Yep.
3 months of list lock. So my list choices were maybe made a few weeks before list lock, but not much longer than that. If it was longer than that, um, and we're done as a meta call, right? So in terms of decision points, it was a decision between Subsira and Kythos. As a team, I think we were focusing on defensive feats. So Kythos was the winner on that front, but it could have gone either way. And then, without knowing how many there would be, Decadus had proven to be fairly consistent into Old Umbry.
Hmm.
Um, so as long as Subsira or Kythos could play into near anything, um, then that off list can be a bit more targeted. Um, so that's how that list pair came together. But it there was a chance I could have played Subsira Morton Abra if list lock was a week before or a week after when it was. Like it's
Okay.
my lists were always in there, which is part of the reason. Not to maybe share a secret that the team had, but there was a chance that Blake was also going to play Crix, but I was so uncertain what I was playing, he couldn't practice anything. So I basically strong armed him out of the faction by accident. Um, and then similarly, I know Jake mentioned already how we were looking at Cephalix. I also ruined the chances of Justin potentially going to Cephalix because what if I played Kythos? And now just can I practice Kythos in Dark Ops or can I not? I don't know yet. So I really was a hindrance to my team's faction list selection.
Brad was a diva, but he went 5-0, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can be a diva when you're 5-0. That's how that works.
I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, the potential of double cricks was a discussion that couldn't really realistically happen with the Brad's continued. I don't want to say
Evenness.
I was. I don't.
Mhm.
I don't want to say indecision because I know that I know that your basically choice was based on consideration and of both what you think is strong and the evolving meta, which ultimately landed you on the Decathlon option that got locked. And also, upon discussion, I do think that Horusk specifically has enough neutral matchups where I felt that he was solid a solid rock into a number of different pairings, such that Brad mentioned earlier in the matchup process. That the Matrix had him leading with me pretty often for that reason. There's certainly a world out there where if Brad had decided on Kythos Decathlon early on, I might have come in with Sepsira Mornebra or Sepsira Viscerus, both of which I quite like. But it could have made things a little skewy rather than Harusk's sort of leveling of the playing field there. I mean, that being said, my own personal record was 2-3 at the WTC, so it might have been just a bust for some of it, but it can happen that way sometimes.
Yeah, that can happen. Orgoth is in a weird state. I've sold out of the faction um, because I'm much more enjoying my old Umbri and my Shadowflame Shard. Just more my playstyle than Orgoth has proven to be. But I'm excited that somebody's excited to have them. So we'll see what happens in January with them. But they're in an odd spot. Double cricks would have been very interesting to see. I'm surprised that nobody else in the field went double cricks. But I know that Europe is not as cricks enthusiastic as kind of the rest of the world is. So I think that also is shaped by the fact that there is just so much Gravediggers and so much uh, Signar in the European meta
Mm-hmm.
that I think Crix has a hard time getting a real foothold. But I'll be interested to see if those numbers hold in the coming year.
I mean, it's also, I think the only Crix being double consideration is that the Necrofactorium doesn't have a bad caster. I think they're all good. I mean,
Yep.
maybe Nicaine is slightly lower tier than some of the others, but I think she's still eminently playable. It's certainly not on the level of like Hasker or Kate Oriana.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big difference as compared to like Gravediggers. It's an excellent faction if you pick 3 or maybe 4 of their 7 casters.
Yeah. Gravediggers definitely have a bench problem. It's Vargas or McCoy, and then you kind of pick from there. Then Jake's fills in. And
Kane
then
Kane is a dark horse.
and then Kane's the other option.
Should have been more Kane's. I think Kane's really good.
Kane is very scary in that faction, but I think people are used to having snipe, and the fact that Kane doesn't have snipe just kind of puts people off, even though
But you get
he
fucking
does.
crates, and you can get 2 more inches off the crate. It's like, what the
Yes,
fuck?
it's the same thing, but
Nah,
it's a different name.
The Black 13th can't get 2 inches off the crate, though, Jake.
Oh,
Correct.
well, fuck those guys. All you care about is your Patriots shooting with their guns.
Yeah, Charger spec Patriots with Kane are scary, and I don't miss that we didn't see those.
Yes. I have a question from an up-and-coming player, a Mr. Daniel Riker. Can you provide a moment during the event where an international player may have played a matchup with a different approach than you are used to in the U.S.?
Uh, like you're talking about like an individual game level?
At an either individual game level or at a meta concept.
Um, I mean, I think list design wise, this is the first time playing against as ranged heavy as a Huxley list I played against from Gali. Played against Huxley in both practice games online and also at Siege, and it just felt like the um, battle group models were more melee oriented. Like just didn't have the gun off arms and didn't have as many coursers with guns. It felt like the heavies that were backed, or I'm sorry, it felt like the heavies that were brought by Huxley were backed up by the Cav and maybe Black 13th or whatever. But I think Golly's list was maybe a bit more standard in Europe, but not saying that I'd practiced much against the States. But I, I think that's maybe about it, at least for me.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose I'm going to just put Brine Bloods using the character beasts is definitely something they do in Europe that they do not do much in the U.S.
Thanks for
Yeah.
nothing, Andy.
Hey, I told Andy to run the Great Old One as his Trike Slayer, and he did, and it worked.
It works great as the Trike Slayer.
That's the only reason he put it in his list. Is because I convinced him to.
Thanks for nothing, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just Andy. There's Cosma too, because everybody forgets about Cosma. But you know, my game against Jacob is, you know, I was not 100% prepared for the Great Old One. On one hand, he doesn't slay Garlghasts because crit amputation doesn't work on monstrosities, which is silly. But it's not like I could drag him either, and you know, that was of course with his Ragemonger list, and so that was like one of the matchups where I really missed the extra power that the Frother head could have gotten me. I think there are other positioning issues with that game too. You know, leading back to some of how the terrain on the streaming tables was arranged. But overall, it was I wasn't as accustomed to the unique capabilities of those beasts as much as I feel as much as I feel I should, you know, I could have been. But I think that's just I think that's the most stark contrast to me about how Europe plays the game, and you know, the popularity of Brine Bloods over there by comparison to the U.S.
Yeah, they do love their brines, and they do play them very differently than the U.S. approach. And it does make for a slightly different meta. But again, I think part of that is the prevalence of other factions. I think enables brines to kind of have a pocket where the way the U.S. meta kind of builds out, I don't know that brines have as cozy a pocket.
You talking about in a team format?
In a team format and just in the standard 1v1 format.
I mean, in a team format, I guess the trolls in general, troll bloods, brine bloods throughout the ages, they always have this issue where, like, because they reliance on tough and the knockdown heal or whatever you do, they always fall within the crosshairs of all these other things, and they're just like the victims of these other factions fighting. They're like, oh, we're gonna take down the trike, and also, sorry, brine blood, but we also fuck you over too while we're at it. And that's just kind of what happens with all troll factions.
Yep. Yeah, they definitely crosshair often. So I have a couple other listener questions. This one is directed at Iron Lip. This is from Dan Hornschnacki. How does it feel to have the most desirable jersey swap this year?
I think Dan has that in his own head. I did not have anyone clamoring to come get mine, but it's nice to be seen.
Excellent. And then generally for the group, this is from Chilled. What was your favorite round or game and why?
Um, I hmm, I don't
Uh,
know if I have a favorite.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that one is that one's a tougher one to answer because there were aspects of all the rounds that I liked, and you know the bearings of whether or not we did well or not as well as in the case of when we fought Paddington. It doesn't automatically put it as, oh yeah, round four was the worst because that's the only one we lost.
No, round four
Uh,
is still great.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that game. I mean, I think I suppose I'll say this in terms of a little up ahead of WTC, like the week when we were there and talking to other people on the other teams as well as us Americans. I was definitely in the argument of you know clamoring for the virtues of the Gargas Spiderhead compared to all of the other Orgoth players who were on the Frother head. And, I think they're different in, they have different applications and different advantages in places. There are definitely times where I'm super glad I had the Spiderhead, and there are definitely games where I missed the extra power and utility of the Frother. So with that in mind, I would say game one was my favorite game because it was the one game where my drag head actually did, more profit than dragging in just some random troopers.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think so round five against Australia, I got to play against Robin, and Robin and I have played each other online.
Hmm.
I think only once prior to that. Um, but there's such a focus around clean play WTC and um, uh, kind of making sure that you're communicating all of your intentions and then kind of executing on what you've then said. And there, the, it's a hard game, right? To make sure that you do everything in order after you even run through all of it verbally, right? So at least about that game with Robin is I think we're both victim to what I'm about to say next, right? Well, like we'll
Hmm.
verbalize before we do anything on the start of our turn. I'm going to be doing this thing. I got to clear these continuous effects. I'm going to ambush in these models. Not going to move any focus out. We're going to move these things here to do these things. Okay, now let's start doing them, right? And then partway through all that, you miss step 7 on your 20-step plan, right?
Yep.
And I think both of us, because we had talked through everything that we were intending to do, and it was up to that point in the thing, there's been no deviation. Not that this is, I think, what you're aiming for in WTC is to kind of have the expectation that your opponent will allow you to do this. But we were both just, Robin, just do the thing, and then vice versa, right? Like you talk
Yep.
through it, you didn't change your plan partway through because dice failed you, right? Like it was a extremely relaxed game of very competitive War Machine, right? Like, um, I don't mean to call out a thing, but like Robin walked through. I forget if it was. I think it was round 3. Maybe it was 4. Doesn't matter. But like walk through
Hmm.
everything he was going to do. Even measured it out. Measured the range for where these models are going to be at because he was going to ambush in his commandos and shoot my Necro Harvester. But obviously he can't do that yet. We're not at that part of the turn yet. So starts doing everything else. Moves a Patriot. And then realizes he never actually put down the ambushing models. Nothing else has happened yet.
Yep.
Robin, just put the models down. Right? Like So like, I'm not looking to say no to that, right? And then I don't
Right.
remember like what else in that game. But it was a very relaxed game, even though we both very much wanted to win. So like that. I mean, I don't know if it was just my favorite game, but like that kind of attitude and energy, um, I'm a big fan of. Now, like, mind you, if he had talked through his whole plan of these models later in the plan are going to go do this thing, but everything before that was different or deviated from it, and then you forget to say, well, no, I can't, right? Like,
Right.
but that's not what happened. So anyway,
That makes good sense. Jake, favorite game or round?
I mean, I liked all my rounds. I liked playing against all the opponents. Um, I'm big on intent, declaring what you're trying to do, so that your opponent is aware of what you're trying to do, so that they can also look at what you're doing and then confirm with you, so it's very clear and everybody's happy. Um,
Hmm.
my last two games were tons of fun. Uh, I think my game against Chris from Paddington, it was like a rematch because I played him in the online league uh, a few months ago, and it was nice to see how his list evolved since then. But it was the same thing. Everything was, we were declaring intent. Everything was very casual. We both wanted to
Hmm.
win, but like there was one point in the turn where he was going to move over his rowdies and take the shotgun shot at my guys, but he was going to fire for effect the guy who has the double barrel shotgun, and he was feeding with boom boom to make this happen. Moved over and put fire for effect on a model, and then realized that that model wasn't the guy with the shotgun, but it was boom boom's feet, and he had the distance to move to get there. So I was just like, just do
Hmm.
it. Like you already talked this all out. Like as long as you have the extra 3 inches or whatever to get there, I don't care. I don't know if a lot of other people would allow that, but like he already declared it. It's everybody here is nobody's trying to like one up or get you or anything like that. Like he walked
Right.
through the steps of his turn, what he was going to do specifically, put down the bases. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to shoot. So it was
I,
just the game was clean. The games were all clean.
Yeah, I think at this level, and obviously we want to win, but I don't think any of us really want to win off of a gotcha. We're not looking for the opportunities to say, "Ha, you pointed at the one with the grenade instead of the one with the shotgun. No combo for you." That's not the way we do it here.
Right. No, and that makes sense. Again, uh, I'm big on always wanting the best game possible, and if the intent is clear, then it makes it very easy for those things to occur. Um, Going and walking through the turn, um, all those things. And it's great to hear that that is essentially the WTC standard. So great to hear there. How this is another one from Chilled. How did this WTC compare in feel/competition to previous years you have attended?
I mean, I only have one to pull from. This one felt more competitive than the one in 2022 to me because in 2022 the field was above 32 teams. I think it was initially planned to be at 64 and you couldn't fill it. But when they realized they couldn't fill it, as they did in years prior, it just became an open invite to send whoever. So it
Hmm.
felt like there was quite a few teams of um, players just kind of went because there was that open call out there. Um, it was also the end of an edition, so like people are just playing what they feel like. Players are showing up because they can, right? Like 2022 of the two I get to pick from felt less competitive than this one.
And I also only have a field of two to pick from as well. My other one was 2023, and that was obviously following from 2022. This was the first year of the Mark IV rules, so certainly there was some awkwardness in the rollout to begin with, and the Mark IV factions. I don't even think Dusk was out yet. I think it was just Orgoth, Storm Legion, and Winter Corps with their first wave of models, and this was pre Gargast, pre Huxley, pre so many things that define the meta for those factions these days, or even in 2024 pre Mastodon in the case of Winter Corps. So it was definitely, I mean, there was certainly it was certainly a competitive feel, but it wasn't really, the game was still in flux, where I feel it's a bit more settled now, and that definitely, I think, plays into sort of the faction diversity we've seen, both which, all of the Mark IV factions, obviously not evenly, but, they're all represented with more than just a one-off. There weren't really any clear losers in attendance, except comparatively. But, even Wintercore and Orgoth had a decent amount of representation. So, yeah, I think there would be... it felt like a healthier environment this year.
Yeah, being like I guess the third year, because 2023 was the first year that we got sort of Mark IV, but it was like really, it was rough then. And then last year, the stuff was all being ironed out. Not everything was released. This was the first year that like most of the stuff was fleshed out, and there were new things being released. So this year it was fairly competitive, but the selection of models to pick from was much less than in the past, right? So
Yep.
in regards to difficulty, yeah, a lot of the players were very, very, very good players, and you can never expect an easy game at the WTC. But if I had to pick the hardest year for WTC, it was 2019, and that was right in the middle of the MK3, getting near towards the end. I mean, not towards the end, but that was like prior to COVID. 2019 was when like Grimkin was at the top, and you had like a million clockatrices everywhere. Just the meta back then, there was so much more depth to it. There were so many more like monster lists you had to watch out for that you couldn't prepare for everything. And that was the problem back then. So I think that the WTC back in that era, the 2018-2019, was extremely rough. And then the 2022, obviously the MK3 Apocalypse, where you had Deathjack and Karchev running around everywhere, that was freaking miserable, and I'm very happy that we're away from that. But this year, it was quite competitive. But I think that just for overall faction diversity and just having a lot of overpowered lists at the time, I think 2019 takes the cake.
No, definitely a good year. That was a very strong meta. It was a good watch too. As somebody that has watched a lot of WTC games, those are some good ones to look out for if you can find them on the YouTubes. Friend of the show and one of the co-hosts of Brightbringers, Wolf the Cat asks, did you go to IKEA while in Sweden?
Nope.
No.
We walked by it, but we did not go inside.
I didn't even see one.
This was we were a little off the beaten path. This was after we went to the Vasa Museum, and we were walking with Seth and Tim, and this was when basically the bridge closed due to emergency. There was like a car fire, so we had taken the bus to get there, and the bus route was temporarily canceled while they handled the emergency. So we just walked to a nearby espresso house later on in the city, and we grabbed an Uber from there. But we did walk by IKEA on that section of the city. We also walked by a Ferrari dealership, so that was nice.
They're like the same thing.
Oh, completely the same thing.
IKEA, the Ferrari of furniture.
All right. I'll have a couple of quick travel questions for you guys. What was the best meal that you had while you were in Sweden?
Went to this place, actually with Blake, had, I think, the best carpaccio I've had in my life at this Italian place in Stockholm that I can no longer remember the name of the restaurant right now.
Yeah, I could find it. Hold on, but yeah, that restaurant was really good. The carpaccio was excellent. Although my personal favorite has to be the Viking meal that we had a couple of days later. There was this like underground Viking Viking bar and restaurant. It's like entirely lit by candles. There's no other light source in there except like emergency lighting near the entrance, the emergency exits. And they literally announce every party as they're coming in to seat them. And then of course we had beer and meat and all sorts of different meat dishes. That one was really good.
And actually, I want to go back and edit my answer. So, like, that carpaccio was very good, but the name of the restaurant was Florentine. I went back to find it in
That's it.
Stockholm. But, and I've not been to many WTCs, so I'll let Jake add color to this answer. But I also thought that from Friday evening through Sunday, the food at the venue was fantastic.
That is high praise coming from somebody in the hospitality business, Brad.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, event management's tough. It's very easy to throw box lunches together. But this was like a full buffet lunch for 3 meals a day, the entire weekend. And the food was good. Right? I never left the hall hungry, like I need to go find something else to eat. Like, there's nothing here I want. Like, the lunch was good every day. I don't remember that being as desirable when we were in Belgium, and I was not at other WTCs. But that's really just credit to the venue. I know that both the mayor and the venue want Peter to get the event in town again. And as a participant, I want Peter to host the event again. So, yeah, I thought that was great.
That's wonderful.
I had some Texas barbecue right around the corner from where we stayed in Sweden as we were at Team USA's little bunkhouse. And believe it or not, it was probably some of the best barbecue I've had in quite some time. And it was funny, and it was good old Texas style barbecue in Sweden.
That's wonderful.
Although, Jake, for my knowledge, how did the venue, like on the weekend of WTC, how did the venue's meals compare to other venues' meals from previous WTCs?
So I understand that everybody's pulling together these events, and they have to work within the budget that's given to them based on ticket sales, things like that. So when we first started going back in 2013, like that year, it was like summer camp, and we were like, I remember because it was one of my first times going to Europe too. Went into the get breakfast, and it was like, here's your piece of cheese and bread, and you will be happy, peasant. And I was like, wow, I'm a prisoner here. And then like going from that to something that we had this past weekend. This past weekend was nice. The food was good. You had a lot of options. It was a buffet style too. A lot of the other places, it was you go through the lunch line, you get your food, and that's it. There's no more after that. So I felt like it was very accommodating this year. Like you said, the food selection was great. Other places, we've never had a buffet where you go back and you just keep on refilling your place. Like once it's served, once it's gone, it's gone. So I did like this. And also, the mayor of Ronneby went and picked up, who was it, Sean? Sean from
has that made it onto a
airport.
podcast yet?
Yes, that has made it onto a podcast.
So shout out to the mayor of Ronneby for being so accommodating to pick up Sean from the airport.
I enjoyed the mayor's remarks. He had a quick speech during the opening ceremonies.
From what Peter said, I think the mayor had played 40K in the past or Warhammer Fantasy in the past and is currently a Magic player. So, Peter might be developing a meta starting with the mayor in that town soon.
That's great. It was wonderful to see the remarks from the hotel on all of the WTC participants, and I love the fact that they want the event back. But it is pretty remarkable that town was able to absorb and host you guys in a great way. When that town is about 400 and some people, and there was 160 some people at the WTC this year. So you almost added a quarter population to the town, just being at the event.
Just bring your own transport.
Yeah, there are no taxis at all in that town.
That is good to know. All right, so closing thoughts on the WTC. Anything that you guys want to cover that we haven't covered? We'll go ahead and start with JVM.
So I was overall very impressed this year with how all the USA teams came together and had more open discussions. I was excited that there was a group house that was organized by Brad and by Seth to get players to go meet up there, play games the week prior to, talk through some items, and really help people shake the rust off before playing the event. I also do think I was trying to go through past WTCs, but back when there used to be 5 teams, there was always a team USA somewhere that would always have a losing record, and I do believe that this year is the first time in a very long time that all the USA teams were all in winning records, and it just shows how far everybody has come. And I'm very excited to be part of the U.S. community. I'm very happy for my teammates that pulled together and they were very supportive of each other, very open to communication, very helpful when anybody wanted matches, and we really just came together and worked together as a dedicated team in a country to put together our overall, I guess, just our I'm losing the train of thought for words here, but just overall our performance. I'm very happy with how everybody did, and it was a pleasure to be a captain this year for the USA and to be on a team with these people.
That's my captain.
We'll shoot it over to Blake.
Well, I think it's just so many have said it before, and I'm just going to keep adding on. Where it's despite all the after-action reports of who played what and where the data is, and you've been instrumental in collecting, collating, and discussing all of that across our various casts. I think it's just such a reminder that the WTC is so much more than just a collection of games. It's just everybody, coming from all over the world with, this shared hobby and I think this shared sense of respect. All of the games were good. That certainly we've played. I certainly didn't see or hear a lot of, negativity from anywhere else there. The venue was great. All the teams just after every game or day, just sitting down in the big dining hall there and getting dinner, talking, chatting. Many going down to the bar below to have some drinks or play shuffleboard and doing it all again on Sunday. And I just think there really isn't a premier worldwide competitive event aside, I don't think there's really a substitute for just that sense of community that is just as much what the WTC is about, rather than which country is the best for a given year.
Excellent. And Mr. Brad Park, what are your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything I could say that would be better said than what Jake said. So I'm not going to try.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time tonight and talking with us. Phenomenal performance by all of the USA teams. Condor soaring the highest, obviously taking the silver and damn near being there for getting the gold. But that's what next year's for. I am very excited for the state of U.S. War Machine, considering where we were, 36 months ago. And I think I started running nulls like 30 months ago. And to see that growth and the growth of the competitive scene in the U.S. again, the fire in the U.S. after last year and getting the bronze, and to see all of the work that all of the USA teams did this year and to see it pay off with the best finishes in years by all of the US teams. Really heartening. Appreciate all that you guys were able to share with us tonight on the WTC, the prep, and the event itself. We will be doing some more WTC content as a whole, digging into some numbers. So if you have questions that you want answered, you can be like Brad Park and just message me or email me, and we can make these things happen and create some more content around it. But I appreciate you all being here tonight, and thank you for your time and your interest. And we'll do the network things of please like and subscribe, tell your friends about the cast, and listen to it repeatedly. And thank you again, everybody.